never slow up, no I don't take shit, I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever... Hey team, I got a question here, and that is how to train with heart rate training zone. Okay, the individual who left this comment, I didn't specify exactly what he meant, but I'll do the very best I can in regards to answering this question in terms of how to train with heart rate training zone. I think that in terms of heart rate training, there's certainly a place for that. I've utilized heart rate monitors since 1995 when I was a freshman in college. I never used heart rate monitors when I was in high school. Heard about them, but I never used them when I was in high school. But when I got to college, Jack Hazen, my collegiate coach, who's one of the best distance running coaches in the world, definitely Google his name, Jack Hazen. He had us using heart rate monitors. Now, the technology today is much different than it was when I was a freshman at college at Malone University. I would use the strap, which really, if you have a strap heart rate monitor, that is much more accurate versus if you're using a heart rate monitor like a Garmin, like I had the Garmin 965. It does have a wrist heart rate checker, so it checks your heart rate via your wrist, but really to be the most accurate is to use a strapped heart rate monitor. So in terms of how to train with heart rate training zone, a lot of times the Maffetone method, I've made a few videos about that, where basically Dr. Maffetone says that when you are running between zone 1 and zone 2, you want to be running at your aerobic threshold. When you're running at your aerobic threshold, that's the point where we just start to build up lactic acid, but there's such a small amount of lactic acid buildup that we can really run for hours, really several minutes, even several hours, depending on how fit you are, running at your aerobic threshold. Okay, for me personally, at 48, the Maffetone method basically states that you subtract your age from 180. So for me, my aerobic threshold would be 132, and that's like running really around like between zone 1 and zone 2. Now zone 3, 4, and 5, obviously that's running more toward your ventilatory threshold, or i.e. your anaerobic or lactate threshold. That's the point where your breathing becomes much more labored. We're building up much more lactic acid, and training at your ventilatory threshold or your lactate threshold, that's running more toward around 88 to 92% of max heart rate. When you're running at ventilatory threshold 1, there's ventilatory threshold 1, which is more so running at tempo effort. It's still difficult, but you're running around 66 to around 72% of max heart rate. And then there's ventilatory threshold 2, which is more toward your anaerobic threshold or your lactate threshold, where again, you're running around 88 to 92% of your max heart rate. When you're running at between like zone 4 and zone 5, that's running closer, especially more toward 5, is running toward your VO2 max. That's where you're running at your maximum oxygen uptake. You're running so fast you can't clear lactic acid faster than it's building up. So obviously we have a very difficult time. Much more oxygen is required running at that particular intensity. It's much more uncomfortable, and at times obviously we'll have to stop and take a break. When you're doing like repeat 200s or repeat 800s on the track, that's mainly the reason why. I mean, it's that adenosine triphosphate, ATP, muscle ATP. So when you're running at VO2 max, you're running closer to zone 4 and 5. Those are some of the areas, the zones that I want you thinking about in terms of how to train with heart rate training zone. This particular athlete asked that. Again, there are times where you want to use heart rate, but there's other times where you just want to focus on feel. Okay, I've had a lot of times where I'll use my heart rate monitor in the morning for my AM run, and then in the evening for my easy run, for my easy AM run, and then for my PM run, which would be an easy run as well, I don't focus on wearing a heart rate monitor. And then there's times where I just focus on, if it's an easy day, I already know the distance of my course, I won't even wear my watch, and I'll just focus on
recovery and focus on feel versus going off of heart rate. Now, obviously, where I think heart rate training is very important is where, and especially if you're wearing a strap versus just focusing on the wrist. Again, if you want to be the most accurate, get a heart rate strap, and that usually goes right in front of your heart. So, and it links up with your watch. The most important times where you want to use heart rate monitors is when you're doing like tempo runs. If you want to get on a track and you want to find out what your max heart rate is, you can do an all-out 400 or all-out 800, and that'll give you a general idea of what your max heart rate is. Just immediately check your heart rate after you do that all-out effort to find out where you're at in terms of your fitness. Other ways of getting your max heart rate, they say, is subtracting your age from 220. That will give you a guesstimated idea of what your max heart rate is. A lot of these new Garmin watches will give you an idea of what your max heart rate is based on your overall fitness and how your fitness is progressing with your workouts. So there's definitely pluses and perks that come along with heart rate monitors. But again, there is just some times where you want to focus more on feel. There's times where even if you're doing a tempo run or you're doing a track workout, you already know what specific splits you're aiming for. If you're aiming for doing 16 400s on the track and you're like, hey, I want to hit 120 or 125 per rep, you're going to know if you're off or if you're on. It's not so much, you can wear your heart rate monitor just to see how high your heart rate goes, but again, it does take some time for your heart rate to get up anyways. So it's not always as accurate if you're doing track workouts versus if you're doing tempo runs or long runs where you're spending a much more long period of time during that training effort, and you have plenty of time to get your heart rate up. If you're doing tempo runs, just know don't go too anaerobic too soon. Don't try to run too fast too soon, because again, it takes some time to get that heart rate up. But usually within about 800 meters or about 3 minutes or so into a tempo run, your heart rate will generally get up to where you're aiming for it to be at. And then once you hit that, then settle into your pace and focus on holding that effort and that particular intensity for whatever duration that you're aiming for. But I do think that a lot of athletes get caught up with heart rate monitors and really focus too much of their time and focus on heart rate, and don't always focus as much time as they should on just overall feel. Okay, if you're wanting to do a tempo run or you're wanting to do a harder long run, try to not focus so much on the heart rate and just focus on your feel and focus on how you're feeling in your overall effort. Obviously, there's going to be times where you definitely do want to use a heart rate monitor so that, again, you're not running too fast on easy days and too slow on hard days. So there are definitely many, many benefits to heart rate monitor training that definitely help you to not overtrain. They help you to make sure that you're running slow enough on your recovery days so that you can adapt and recover from the hard anaerobic workouts you're doing. Again, I've briefly touched on zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and what those mean. We discussed the Maffetone training method. Again, it doesn't always work for a lot of athletes. If training it with Maffetone training, if you're running too much of your mileage too aerobically, the Maffetone training method, especially if you're trying to run a specific time and really try to improve on your half marathon or 10 mile, if you're running too many of your miles or kilometers too easily, you're simply not going to get faster. I mean, again, you're going to be very strong in terms of your endurance, but you do have to make sure that you're focusing on training at or below your goal race pace. You got to get that goal race pace to feel stronger and improve your overall lactate tolerance, your ability to clear lactic acid more effectively so that you slow down less than your competition. Again, also heart rate monitors and heart rate training in general will help you to also work on your pacing as well. Okay, another great time to use heart rate monitors is during fartlek workouts. Try to get that heart rate up. If you're doing 2 to 3 minutes hard, and then 2 to 3 minutes easy, doing repeats of that. Sometimes that can be a great time to use heart rate monitors as well. So I hope this video in terms of heart rate monitor training has been helpful for you. If you have any other questions regarding this or any other topic that's on your mind, feel free to leave me a comment below this video or any of my videos. I will reach back out to you and respond. And definitely check out the resources below all of my videos, as well as on RunDreamAchieve.com if you're trying to get to the next level in your racing and in your training and overall fitness. I know those resources on RunDreamAchieve.com will definitely help you get to the next level. I have full confidence in that. So thank you so much for your support of this channel, and I'll talk to you all in the next video.